There are places in Japan where sorrow does not fade. It settles into the land itself. The Kiyotaki Tunnel is one of those places. Legend holds that this tunnel was paid for with human lives, that the deaths of its workers were absorbed into the stone, leaving something behind. For nearly a century, this passage has been linked to tragedy, accidents, and unsettling accounts, earning a reputation as one of Japan's most deeply feared locations. Tonight, we enter the Kiyotaki Tunnel to document what remains. We will walk its length, examine its history, and explore why this passage is still avoided after nightfall, long after its construction was complete. Our journey tonight takes us into the mountains outside Kyoto, to a tunnel that appears ordinary by the light of day. But as dusk settles over the forest, another story begins to surface. This is the Kiyotaki Tunnel, a place shaped by a dark and painful history that never fully receded. To understand the stories tied to this passage, we must first look to its origins. Construction began in 1927 for the Atagoyama Railway, a line intended to carry pilgrims into the surrounding mountains. The railway itself was short-lived, opening in 1929 and ceasing operations in 1944, a casualty of wartime shortages that saw its steel dismantled and repurposed for the war effort. But while the railway vanished, the tunnel's legacy was forged during its brutal creation. The work was unforgiving. A persistent and grim legend holds that construction relied on forced or unpaid laborers, toiling under conditions few could survive. While official records remain scarce, a familiar silence surrounding projects of that era, the folklore is unwavering. It speaks of workers dying from accidents, landslides, and exhaustion. The most disturbing claim is that some of the dead were never properly buried, but sealed within the concrete and stone of the tunnel itself, becoming a permanent part of the structure they were forced to build. This dark origin is amplified by folklore tied to the tunnel's length. According to legend, it measures exactly 444 meters. In Japanese, the number 4 is pronounced shi, a homophone for death. A length of 444 is not just a measurement. It translates symbolically to death, death, death. While modern surveys place the tunnel closer to 500 meters, the legend of the triple death curse has clung to this place for decades, shaping how it is remembered and avoided. In Japan, places marked by this kind of symbolic weight are rarely challenged without consequence. When warnings are ignored, the belief is not that something might happen, but that something eventually will. After the railway was dismantled, the tunnel was converted for a new purpose, a single-lane road. Its narrow design, built for trains rather than cars, creates an immediate sense of confinement for modern vehicles. But it is not the architecture alone that defines the experience of passing through the Kiyotaki Tunnel. The surrounding forest has become associated with suicides, and this accumulation of loss deepened the tunnel's reputation over time. The most widely reported apparition is a woman in white, believed to be the spirit of someone who took her life nearby. Drivers describe seeing her briefly in their rearview mirror, only for the image to vanish when they turn to look. Others claim she appears suddenly in the darkness ahead. People also speak of the traffic light at the tunnel's entrance behaving erratically at night, and of disembodied sounds carrying from the woods. What remains is a man-made scar on the landscape, one many believe has absorbed enough tragedy to become something more than a road. As daylight fades, the Kiyotaki Tunnel becomes something else. By day, it is simply a narrow mountain passage, a functional remnant of an abandoned railway repurposed for modern traffic. The concrete shows its age, the road feels tight, but nothing about it demands fear. Cars pass through. Cyclists ride by. Life continues. That changes at night. As dusk settles over the forest outside Kyoto, the atmosphere around the tunnel grows noticeably heavier. The surrounding trees close in, blocking out what little ambient light remains. Sound behaves differently here. The forest absorbs it. Even the road seems quieter than it should be, as if noise struggles to carry. The traffic light at the tunnel's entrance becomes the only source of color, red, yellow, green, cycling in isolation against the dark. Drivers unfamiliar with the area often hesitate here longer than necessary, unsure why they feel reluctant to proceed. This hesitation is part of the story. Locals have avoided this passage after nightfall for decades, not because of a single incident, but because of accumulation. Death during construction. A railway erased by war. Repeated suicides in the surrounding forest. Stories passed down, not as warnings shouted aloud, but as quiet advice. Take another route. In Japanese belief, places marked by repeated suffering do not reset with time. Pain does not vanish simply because decades pass. It lingers, not always as a ghost, but as a presence that influences behavior. A feeling that something here has not settled. Standing at the entrance now, that idea becomes easier to understand. The tunnel does not announce itself as dangerous. There are no signs demanding attention, no obvious threat. Instead, it invites you forward in silence. The darkness inside feels complete, swallowing the far end of the passage even before night fully arrives. Crossing this point feels less like entering a road and more like stepping into a boundary, a line between history and something still unresolved. This is the threshold. Beyond it lies the weight of everything this place has absorbed. And once inside, there is no room to turn around. Before we step inside, it's worth saying this. Horror across borders exists to document places like this. Locations shaped by real history, real loss, and the stories people quietly avoid passing down. If you find value in investigations that focus on where fear comes from, rather than trying to manufacture it, supporting the channel helps make more of this work possible. Now let's go forward. The moment we cross the threshold, the world outside the tunnel disappears. The air inside is colder than it should be, heavy with moisture and the faint smell of damp earth. Sound behaves strangely here. Each footstep echoes briefly before being swallowed, leaving a silence that feels intentional rather than empty. The walls press in close, their stained concrete surfaces slick with water that seeps endlessly from the mountain above. This passage was never designed for people on foot or for modern vehicles. It was carved for a single train, moving slowly through darkness. That design choice is impossible to ignore now. The ceiling feels low. The space feels tight. The tunnel does not invite movement. It tolerates it. As we move deeper inside, the light from the entrance fades quickly. The far end of the tunnel remains invisible, even though logic says it must be there. This is one of the tunnel's most persistent legends, that the distance through it never feels consistent, that the walk seems longer in one direction than the other. Standing here, that belief doesn't feel unreasonable. There is a pressure in the air that is difficult to define. Not a physical force, but a sensation. A subtle tightening that makes it harder to relax. Many people report dizziness or nausea inside the tunnel, and there are practical explanations for that. Poor ventilation, lingering exhaust, cold air trapped underground. And yet, those explanations feel incomplete. There is a persistent awareness of being observed, not by something visible, but by the space itself. In places shaped by prolonged human suffering, that response is not uncommon. The mind searches for meaning when surrounded by silence and confinement. Still, the feeling here does not fade with familiarity. It settles in and remains. We continue forward. Near the center of the tunnel, both entrances are reduced to distant points of light. This is where the space feels most oppressive, where the walls seem to hold their breath. The concrete here is stained darker than elsewhere, streaked by decades of water and mineral runoff. Looking at it, it's impossible not to recall the legends tied to this structure. The men who died during construction, the claim that some were never removed, that the tunnel itself became their final resting place. Whether or not that is literally true almost feels beside the point. What matters is that this place carries the memory of those beliefs. Stories repeated often enough have weight. Over time, they shape how a location is perceived, how it is approached, and how it is avoided. The tunnel does not need to prove anything. Its reputation does the work for it. The silence here is absolute, and within that silence, small sounds become magnified. A distant drip, the faint scrape of something shifting in the darkness. Each noise demands attention, not because it is extraordinary, but because there is nothing else to focus on. This is how fear takes root, not through spectacle, but through absence. Through the slow realization that the space does not respond to you. It does not acknowledge your presence. It simply endures. Standing still in the center of the Kiyotaki Tunnel, time feels distorted. Seconds stretch longer than expected. The darkness ahead appears unchanged, no matter how long you stare into it. It becomes easy to understand how people begin to imagine voices here. Not because something speaks, but because the mind resists the idea that a place can be this empty and still. Eventually, the pressure becomes difficult to ignore. We turn back. Exiting the tunnel feels like surfacing from deep water. The air outside is lighter. Sound returns. The forest no longer presses in quite as tightly. Whatever weight exists inside the passage does not follow. It remains contained, as if bound to the concrete and stone. So what remains of the Kiyotaki Tunnel? There is no definitive proof of the paranormal here. No single moment that confirms the legends beyond doubt. But there is something else. Something more reliable. History. Men died building this tunnel. That much is certain. A railway rose and vanished. Steel was torn away for war. Lives ended in the surrounding forest. Stories accumulated quietly over decades, passed from person to person not as entertainment, but as caution. In Japan, places like this are rarely dismissed outright. Suffering is believed to leave an imprint, not always as a ghost, but as an influence. A residue that alters how people behave long after the original events have passed. What we experienced inside the tunnel felt like that residue. Whether the unease comes from psychology, folklore, or something that cannot be easily categorized is impossible to say. What is clear is that the Kiyotaki Tunnel is more than a road. It is a structure shaped by loss, sustained by memory, and avoided for reasons that go beyond logic alone. Some places do not need to be haunted to feel wrong. They only need to remember. What we experienced inside the Kiyotaki Tunnel isn't something that can be neatly explained. Some places carry history so heavy, it never fully leaves. Thanks for joining our journey. Don't forget to subscribe and explore our other investigations into places shaped by real history and loss. New investigations from Horror Across Borders are released every Tuesday and Thursday.